All right, good morning everybody, or good afternoon, depending on where you are across the country. We're proud to present the next section of our Experiencing SolidWorks 2014 webinar series this week. Yesterday we talked about some parts and sketching. Today the focus is on assemblies and drawings. So this is the series for the week. We do have two more webinars scheduled. So tomorrow we're going to do the SolidWorks solution. We're going to focus on add-on products like EPDM and SolidWorks simulation and those sort of ideas. And then on Friday we have our Javelin electrical team presenting to you SolidWorks electrical and focusing on the what's new with the 2014 release. Your host today, my name is Eric Van Essen. I'm a product manager here at Javelin, and with me is Jake.
Hello everyone.
Perfect. Let's get rolling with the content today. We thought we'd kick it off with just a couple things about what's new at Javelin for those of you who didn't attend yesterday. We're going to shorten it up a little bit though, just get to a couple of the high-level bullets. Let's see some of those. First thing we did want to share with everybody is that with the acquisition of another reseller out in Western Canada, Javelin is now coast to coast. So we have 6 offices across the country. So 6 places that we do host regular training, but we also on top of that, do training quite commonly out of hotels in local cities as well. So, look for local courses. But, what that means to you is an increased support coverage, which is really nice. We have more guys constantly covering the lines. Large pool of experts, which is quite nice. So we have over 200 combined certifications. We actually, I think, are up to 3 elite application engineers. Oh, no, actually, I think even 4. We have 4 on staff. I should have updated that because I was just up in the last couple of weeks. And over 27 certified SolidWorks professionals. And 6 simulation and 6 EPDM. So what that means is we can deliver, quite a vast solution beyond SolidWorks. We actually took on some new solutions, so it's good to know about ARIS EPLM, which is an extension of EPDM. So for those customers who want to do project management, configuration management, more advanced bill of materials and change management, those are the areas where ARIS is going to excel in. Strong solution on electrical design, of course, with SolidWorks Electrical and still the E3 product. And doing some work in the structural design area, new training offerings we'll discuss. And lastly, I did want to make the announcement that Stratasys has purchased our supplier object for the 3D printing. So we now have access to the complete Stratasys product line. So that's really exciting and great new technology we can share with you. On the training front, we do have a number of new offerings that we've been working on this year. So we do have flex day programs where customers who aren't sure exactly where to allocate training purchase a bulk number of days in advance and can allocate them per student per course after the fact. So that's quite nice. Online training has been a growing area for us. So especially those advanced courses or those ones that are difficult to fill a room locally in different areas, we're able to host more regularly across the country, which is nice. And then of course custom stuff for you. So custom skill building, mix and match programs. So the idea is to take the content and skills that we have and align them with your industry and requirements to take the next steps with SolidWorks. So with that, we're going to continue with the content, but before we do, I do want to ask just a quick poll question. A very easy one so far. We had a little bit of audio issues yesterday, so we wanted to just get some feedback on how it sounds so far. So if you can kind of help us with that, that would give us some feedback. We did, for those of you who tuned in yesterday, we do apologize. It turns out that the entire office here we're broadcasting out of had an internet hiccup right in the middle of the webinar. So that affected the entire office, and of course this webinar was largely affected. All right, so it looks like the majority of people say pretty good. There is a little bit of choppiness out there, but I think we're going to continue with the webinar without making any further adjustments. So we're going to go into the content now. We have 2 main topics we're covering today, assemblies and drawings. So we're going to start with assemblies. And I just wanted to rhyme off a few of these enhancements with a PowerPoint first, and then we're going to let Jake take it away and show you some of this in action. First off, when you're working with assemblies, there are new quick ways to access configurations and the flexible side of assemblies. So you don't need to drill down into menus to do that. It's going to be much easier to turn on and off or to switch between configurations. Select by size is a new addition, so you can now do a scroll based on percentage of size and very easily select all the common or the small components such as hardware, hide them in one go. So that's kind of nice. The way the feature manager behaves for scrolling has been improved, and the assembly expert has quite a bit of more information in it to make you have some good knowledge on why your assembly may be performing slowly and be able to diagnose it and make some improvements. Working with mates, there's some new options with how we're viewing mates, so you can view them based on a selection on edges or features, so you can see what interacts with it. Probably one of my favorite enhancements in assemblies this year is this new rotation explode. So in the past, we could just pull it linearly and along the axes, and now we can rotate around an axis or a circle, and that makes it really easy to communicate step-by-step assembly instructions right with core SolidWorks. There are some improvements with how we handle messaging for in-context sketches. So you'll get warned if you're editing a sketch right at that assembly level, and you can think twice. Maybe you want to add that in the part, which might make more sense in many cases. And lastly, there's some really nice improvements to mirror components. So this has been an area of development for a good while. We've been, over the years, we've seen more and more go into mirror because there's so many customers out there that have symmetric design. So it makes sense to be able to support, really everything that way. So we have a whole new list of areas that we're supporting. Before we go along, I just want to ask one more question here. There's a few poll questions along the way. Just while training's fresh in your mind from before, I'm just curious on, what sort of training you think is best to work with you and your team. We are doing our best to offer a variety of different ways to give training, and we are curious on, whether you think that online is a good way to receive training, whether you like the idea of joining one of our Javelin offices. Typically the customers that are closer to our offices are obviously leaning that way. And curious whether it's important to do some skill building specific for you guys or industry specific stuff. If you can kind of fill that out, would be great. Almost wrap it up. Okay, keep it open for a few more seconds here. Last minute voters. Perfect. That's actually, I'm not surprised at that answer. It was 58%, just to share some of those answers, of customers out there are interested in some online training. So I'm not surprised because you guys are the ones who are attending the training today. We need to ask these questions really in a way to people who aren't attending these sort of things as well. But thank you so much for the feedback. It really helps and it keeps us driving towards the right track. So with that, I'm going to let Jake take it away and show you some of these this assembly enhancements in action.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. So yeah, we'll get right into this with some what we call assembly delighters. And really these are things that SolidWorks has added in 2014 just to make it a little bit easier and make it a little bit more fun for us to use SolidWorks 2014. So first, as Eric mentioned, the new explode or the rotate explode command is now available in 2014. So you can really take advantage of this to do a lot of different really interesting things when you explode components. For instance, these two nuts here, we can actually pull them off and have them rotate as they're coming off. So it looks like they're unscrewing when they come off. And then of course we also have access just to the regular linear explode too. So this triad that we're used to, it now has arrows and rings. So the rings basically allow it to rotate, and the arrows allow you to pull it in some linear X, Y, Z direction. And you can have a combination of both rotate and linear at the same time, as we showed with the nuts. So it does offer a really nice way to kind of show. I love to animate these explodes, especially now with rotate explode. It's a really good way to convey how to take apart or assemble your machine. And it's a really nice, nice feature. It's also one of my favorites in 2014. Also, as Eric mentioned, when you're identifying and changing configurations in the assembly, it's now much easier because they're accessible right from the context menu. So now all you have to do is really click on any component, and automatically it'll have a pop-up that you can choose the proper configuration on. So you don't have to right-click and go to Properties and anything like that. So it's a lot quicker to choose configurations, and also for flexible subassemblies, there's now a separate button for that as well. So you can make assemblies flexible without, again, having to go into Properties. So some really nice things. I think I'll wrap it up there for the assemblies, but really just explode, rotate, configurations, flexible. They're really making everything a lot easier for us to control our environment in 2014.
So next up on the assemblies is discussion on mates. There's some really nice enhancements with just how easy it is to work with mates. They're constantly trying to make it easier because that's just an area that we spend so much time driving within SolidWorks when you're working on the assembly level. First off with Smart Mates. So if you recall, Smart Mates is where you can drag faces on top of other faces by holding down the Alt key. You can even do that if you have a part open in another window and drag it into an assembly by whatever face you're holding, and that you don't have to use the Alt key in that case. But regardless of the method that you use, the Smart Mate functionality used to always snap to everything, and what they did is they added an option so you can now control the sensitivity, and that's really nice to make it more usable. The Smart Mate button, also on the default mate behavior. So there's some nice enhancements where it will automatically select a default mate that does not over-constrain the design. So in the past, you could have defaulted to coincident, which didn't always make sense. And on concentric, similarly, axis to cylinder helps out. There's working with the mate dialog. You can have pin it. A very nice new thing is working with the quick mates. So this is a brand new way of working with mates that's just going to make it much quicker to go and add them where you need them. And then lastly, when you go and do a concentric mate, so very common if you have like a bolt or nut or something into on a hole, you have the ability to lock rotation now. So I really like that because a lot of customers will always have to go back, and if they don't want to have any underdefined motion in their assembly, they'll go and define rotation or parallel of a plane or something on that, and that can be kind of cumbersome. So it's nice to do that right in the same task and get one extra degree of freedom locked down within that mate.
All right, well, let's see this in action for 2014. As Eric was saying, really in 2014, they've improved a lot of the methods that we use to mate assemblies together. So not necessarily the mates themselves, although there are some great new ones, but also the methods that we actually use to create those have been improved. So in SolidWorks 2013, when you use the Alt drag method, known as smart mating, the components tend to jump around a little bit when you move this over. So when you use smart mating, it's going to try to lock it onto every single hole it passes when you drag it over. So this behavior was a little bit annoying because it was kind of jumpy. So they added something in 2014 under the options to control the smart mate sensitivity. So basically this acts somewhat as a time delay. So if you hold down the Alt key and you drag a part around, it's not going to jump all over. You're actually going to have to hold it and hover over a location. And if you hover over for a certain amount of time that you set up in that smart mate sensitivity option, then it will apply that smart mate. So it just makes it a lot smoother. And another method for smart mating has been around for a couple of years actually, but it wasn't really readily accessible. And it's actually inside the Move Components command. So with this method, you can actually just double click on a reference and then click the corresponding reference, and SolidWorks will present the mate toolbar. So this is under Move Component, and double click will actually add these mates. So there's also an option, as Eric mentioned, to lock the rotation when you're adding a concentric mate, which can really be beneficial when you're adding screws or nuts or bolts. So they have a lock rotation now. And one of the benefits of the smart mate method is that you can rotate the model around while you're selecting the different mate references. And so this obviously can't be done while you're using the Alt command, because obviously you'd have the Alt key selected and you'd be trying to rotate it, everything like that. So different mate methods can be used in different circumstances to achieve a little bit more fluid mating techniques. So we'll add one more mate to control the rotation of this bracket, and we'll just use a standard mating technique for this to kind of show something new in that. So when you add a mate between the two edges, SolidWorks now defaults to a parallel mate instead of a coincident mate, because a coincident would have overdefined this by default. So SolidWorks 2014 is actually so intelligent it knows it would be overdefined, and it defaults down to a lower mate of parallel, so it doesn't give you any of those errors. So it's very intelligent now. It's going to default to mates so as not to overdefine it. Also, when you're mating an axis to a cylinder, the mate type is now automatically defaulted to a cylindrical as opposed to coincident in 2013. So again, just a little bit more intelligent. It knows when you're mating an axis that you probably want it to go down the center and not just stick to one of the edges or one of the sides. Now this gets to my favorite part of the new mating in 2014. In 2014, they introduced a brand new mate method called quick mates. Now, quick mates doesn't require any commands or buttons. All you do is hold down the control key and click on two surfaces or an edge and a surface, and the mate dialog will automatically pop up. So here I'm not pressing any keys. I'm not doing any shortcuts. All I'm doing is clicking on two faces at the same time, and SolidWorks will automatically ask me which mate I want and apply that mate for me. So it's a really nice way, a really nice quick way of adding mate types, and this has now become my favorite way of adding mates all throughout SolidWorks 2014. So overall, a lot of really nice ways to add mates and more intelligence as well that 2014 offers us in mates.
All right, so we do have some exciting news about mates as well, which is related to the new mates that are coming out. I'm always excited to have new ways of relating geometry and get that design to behave the way that you want. The first mate that we're going to discuss is the sphere mate. So if you do have spherical objects in your design, you're going to open up a whole new array of possibilities with constraining them to geometry. So you can put them along sketches, sphere to sphere, put them along complex faces and have them stay on that face. So a whole new possibilities that weren't available before. We also have the possibility of working with slot mates. So this is a brand new mate, and out of the two, this is the one we're going to be focusing on and showing you today. This is the one we're focusing on today. So you do have the ability to do parallel or concentric sides that are equal radius with a slot mate. So you can work with that and really make it behave as if you have a slot in your design. You can actually mate a slot to the slot as well. So it definitely opens up the door to kind of capture exactly the way it behaves in real life. Before we go on to the example, I do have just another quick poll question I want to ask. Now we do want to just get to know you guys a little bit more, and this is a good opportunity to have a number of customers together. One thing that's near and dear to my heart is PDM. I've been working with this product for about 7 years now, helping clients get ramped up on our different solutions. So I am curious about our audience out there today. What sort of or what applications are you using? Are you using Workgroup? Are you already an enterprise PDM customer? Is this something that's on the horizon that we need to plan with you? If you could just share that with us, would be great. It just gets us knowing our customers that much better, and we can help tailor and focus on the right projects. So we'll leave that open just for a few more seconds. All right. All right, we're getting up there. We only have over half now voted, so all right, perfect. So thanks very much for voting. I'll close it up. And then I'll let Jake take it away on showing you that slot mate in action.
All right, so if you recall from yesterday, if you did attend our webinar yesterday, you'll remember that the whole wizard now supports adding slots. So this kind of goes hand in hand with that. now that you can use a whole wizard to add slots. Now they've also added in conjunction the slot mate tool that we can use to sort of mate these together. So it's actually really exciting. It's a really neat way of mating things in 2014. So the only requirements for a slot mate is that the sides be parallel for a straight slot or concentric for a radial slot, and that the radii be equal. So basically just normal looking slots, nothing too funky with varying patterns or anything like that. So all you have to do is select a cylindrical face or an axis on the slot, and under mechanical mates you can choose the new slot mate. So constraint options for the slot mate are 3 different ones. So we have free, centered in slot, and distance along the slot that we can choose. And we'll go through each one of those. So I'll set this one to free slot mate just to kind of show what happens. You can drag it up and down, and it will stay within the slot, and it actually won't go outside. So even if you pull it up to one end of the slot, it's not going to jump outside of it. It's going to know that the screw has to stay inside of the slot. So if we change this to centered in slot now, this locks the screw to the center of the slot. But of course you can still rotate it around. So we could use the new lock axis option to lock that if we wanted, as we showed previously. And distant and also percent along slot, they're pretty straightforward, but they're very powerful. So distance will be a certain distance from one end or the other end of the slot, and percent will be a percentage. So personally, I like the percentage a little bit better, and that's really just because if you change the size of the slot, it'll still be relatively in the same position if you use a percentage rather than a fixed distance. But there are a lot of nice ways you can use that. There's also other items that can be mated to a slot, such as holes or the bore in this washer. You can also even mate an axis into a slot mate as well. So the part itself doesn't even have to be round or cylindrical. Anything with an axis you can mate into the slot mate tool. Doesn't even stop there. You can also mate slots to slots, which is really neat. It kind of gives you this X, Y sort of a rotation, and again it will stop when it gets to the edge of the slot. So it really gives you an accurate representation of how your machine will work if you're having slots in it and how they move around. Also, radial slots can be mated to other radial slots. So this is really neat. When you rotate this part around, you'll see that the slot or the radial slot actually rotates until it hits that bolt, and then it actually pulls the bolt along with it, just as it would in real life. So it's kind of like a physical dynamics or simulation, and it just works a little bit easier with less graphical power or processing power behind it. So it is a lot quicker and more efficient way of sort of adding this. There are a couple ways that you can't use the slot mate for. These are highlighted here in red. So these ones you can't add a slot mate to because either they have square ends, or they're off the end of the part, or they're both straight and radius. So they have a line and they have another curve in them. But other than that, you can use a new slot mates, and again, you can add these slots under the tool wizard.
We keep joking around that I wouldn't be surprised if some of those areas that we can't support today in slot mates we're going to see as new enhancements in the 2015 or 2016 release, because there's a lot more possibilities when you start getting geometry behaving really like it would in real life. So why stop with like the simple slots? Let's just continue. Quick announcements about the patterning side of SolidWorks. So we did. So in the past, there was some limitations with how you could pattern in an assembly. There was many more options when you're patterning within a part with geometry. So what they've done is leverage all the ways that we could pattern in a part, and the ones that are applicable pattern in an assembly as well. So you can now do sketch-driven patterns, curve-driven patterns, a pattern-driven pattern if you have a piece or a part that's following another part that's been patterned as well. And there's really nice feedback as you're going as well, including like highlighting the seed of your pattern in purple instead of blue, which is quite nice. When you're patterning multi-bodies, this is more of a part enhancement. but we thought we'd talk about it here. We now have the better flexibility with what bodies you're keeping or deleting. So, so if you do have cuts that are making multi-bodies, that's going to give you some extra functionality there. Now, costing is an important part of designs as well. You know, we talked to many customers over the last month about costing. You know, the feedback that we've generally got from customers is that costing is an area that hasn't been used to date, but they said costing is extremely important to my business. So, you know, are there ways that would make it easier to use and add value to the business? So I think everybody is on the same mind frame saying, yes, it'd be great to get better knowledge on what the cost of parts are, but we want to do it with minimal investment in your time. So, you know, a couple things related to enhancement and costings that are directed exactly there. The new volume costing is just a very quick way of producing estimates. You can get volume of your material or blank that's required, as well as the volume of material removed very quickly, and that gives you a sense for machine parts, you know, how you know, just quick ways of approximating costs. Now, it's not necessarily, you know, the cost of the part, I would say, but it's a great way of approximating relative costs. So similar to the way that we're using simulation or analysis in many cases to do relative strength to figure out what a good designer is bad, you know, costing, this functionality will give you a really nice sense of what a more affordable design is or not. So getting that knowledge down to the more junior designers would help out. Template setup will also help out a lot. So being able to share costing with customers of yours that you are doing quoting for, or vice versa. You can now share templates and you can lock them down to share with limited access, so that you don't have to share in-depth knowledge on where that costing comes from. And then, of course, there is some nice enhancements with just working with the sheet metal or cut paths, just making it easier. So, like incorporating percentage scrap, or a nice one is switching between mills or holes very quickly back and forth. So, you know, overall, they're making costing much easier to get value out of with minimal effort. That's really what it's all about today. And this is an area that we believe SolidWorks will continue to invest in because cost is just such an important factor at your business.
All right, let's see a little bit of this in action in 2014. They have done a lot of really nice things in 2014 in the costing front, just as Eric mentioned. So they've streamlined a lot of the workflows to help you set up your costing templates a little faster. They've added a brand new way to calculate costs. So they're expanding both fronts on the costing. So one area of focus was the area of volume costing that we mentioned. So volume costing was added in SolidWorks 2013, but it still required there to be a template that you use for the volume costing. So what they've done in 2014 is they've actually removed the need for a template, and it just makes it a lot easier to get into the costing feature and start getting some rough estimates of your costs. So as you can see here under traditional template costing, which is the way that costing started out back in 2012, we have over on the left a couple of these features that have no cost assigned. So this could have happened for a couple of reasons, but most likely within the template there wasn't an accurate cost for these features, so the costing program just didn't know how to calculate them. So with SolidWorks 2014, you can now access costing options directly from the task pane. So all the options are broken down into the three areas here, the sheet metal, machining, and finishing. So first off, just to control your costing, it's now a lot more accessible, and everything is under one options menu instead of under the parts or the document options. So let's take a look at a couple of machining options first. So for each part, you can control whether SolidWorks costing uses a standard material processing or volume costing. So again, that standard processing, or I like to call it template costing, it gives a couple no-cost assigned features. So with standard recognition, when we select that, you have different options to process the slots as slot features or as volume features. So the other option is to recognize all material removed as a volume itself. So with this option on, so with volume costing option on, you can now choose how to calculate the volume features, either with default machining or if you want a template setup. So cost per volume removed doesn't use a template at all, and that's what makes it so easy to use and set up. it simply calculates the currency value per volume. So however much volume of material was removed, it adds a certain cost per, say, cubic centimeter, and that's what it's going to give you a rough cost. So when you select that method, the part is actually recosted. And you'll notice here on the left, there's actually no more no-cost assigned features, because it's very simple. It doesn't need to recognize every single feature and assign a cost to it. It just looks at the volume of material that you removed from what you started with to create this part, and then assigns a relative cost to it. So again, a really nice, quick way to do it. You're not going to have any errors. And it's a really quick method just to get information from your parts. And if you don't want to go and create all these templates and plug in all the numbers, definitely check out the volume costing option that they've done in 2014. Because it is, again, a really nice way just to sort of get into the costing world without a lot of upfront work.
So quick poll question, just again, helping us learn what sort of priorities you have and how you're working today. Of course, a big area of our business that's been growing over the last couple of years is the 3D printing. Our supplier Stratasys, believes that they're on track to be a larger industry than, larger industry than the 3D mechanical CAD in a number of years. So it's we're definitely excited to be on board. And we are curious whether you think it's a fit for your business. It's a number of applications that a lot of customers just haven't thought of. It really isn't just about prototyping anymore. A lot of customers are using it for jigs and fixtures, mold design. It's really all over the map because at the end of the day, it all comes down to material properties. So with the combination of the Stratasys and Object product offerings, where we can get a nice array of materials that can satisfy different requirements. So you can fill that in. Yeah, pretty much most people voted, so thanks very much. All right. And let's truck away with drawings. So there's a number of enhancements with drawings that we've seen in this release. So I'm just going to rhyme off a bunch of them first. And again, we'll have Jake take it away. So first off is on the annotation side. If you or annotation view area. So this is actually applicable for parts and assembly. So not really on drawings, but we see a lot of clients moving away from drawings, especially if they're machining those components internally to the company. They seem to be much more flexible with how they communicate. But what you do want to do is make sure you include a lot of those typical title block type pieces of information. So those can be now included in this annotation view in parts and assemblies. There are some enhancements with how we're looking at that drawing view panel on the right when you're creating drawings, so just keeping track of what's available for placing again and check marks and that sort of idea. A really nice one is replacing drawing views. So you can now go to any drawing view and replace the reference to a different part or assembly. You can actually replace a part with an assembly and vice versa. So this is just a fantastic capability for leveraging drawings that you've done for similar parts or for the assembly as well. Section cutting line is much easier to access and go to that wizard the same way as before. You can now section surface bodies, which is nice for any of our customers that are working with imported geometry. Stacked balloons are going to be easier to work with for reattaching there. Finding intersection on the fly for dimensioning is nice. And getting that text above and below those dimension leaders and doing the different style of your leader lines helps out as well. When you're working with notes, there's some nice enhancements with uppercases, working that way and be able to switch very quickly. You can attach a note to any view, which is nice, and it's much easier to bring back the labels. So if you ever, it's always a pet peeve, or was a pet peeve of mine, if I accidentally deleted, detail B, scale 2 to 3 that you see on that screenshot. It was very difficult to bring back, and now you can just go into the label tags and bring back all those labels that you want. With the slots we talked about before, we now have slot callouts, so that goes hand in hand. So those are the slots that we were talking about yesterday, just to clarify. Doing angular dimensions, so easier to work with angular dimensions, and also angular ordinate dimensions are much easier to work with. And lastly, on a few extra things, working with your sheet formats, you can now have a secondary sheet format as a default for those second or third pages on your drawings. And on the BOM, a number of enhancements with how we're sorting and working with Toolbox, but personally my favorite is the automatic split. You can predefine a BOM to have so many lines, so if you know that only 50 lines of the way you have your bill of materials, if that fits on your drawing, it will automatically start wrapping and fill up the remainder of the page. So those of you who have bill of materials on a separate page in your drawing package, this is fantastic functionality that's going to make your drawing formatted more accurately out of the gate. You don't have to go back and start slicing and dicing and splitting your BOM the way you want. So with that, we'll let Jake take it away.
All right. Let's look at some drawings in 2014. First, before we actually look at the drawings itself, there's one enhancement they've done to 2014 that relates to both parts and assemblies. And this is a really neat one. I've played around with it, and I'm definitely in love with this enhancement itself. So basically, when you're not in a drawing, when you're just in a regular part or an assembly, if you want, you can put a sort of a title block area under the annotation. There's a new notes area annotation. So basically what you can do is insert a table there, and this notes annotation will stay flat to the screen at all times. So even though it's a 3D part or a 3D assembly and you can rotate it around, you can have this title block looking back at you that's always flat to the screen. So in some cases, you might even get away without making a proper drawing if you just wanted to use this notes annotation. So it doesn't rotate, it's static, and again, it's under the annotations pane, and basically you just insert a table and you can insert that there. So a really nice enhancement if you don't want to go right into drawings. But back in drawings, the view palette use icons, the view palette now has, when you drag across the view icons and you use one, say a top view or a bottom view, previously it would delete this icon. So basically it would not allow you to have two of the same views. So you couldn't have two top views in your drawing because it would delete that top view icon. So now in 2014, it allows you to drag out as many of the same view as you want. So it's not going to delete those view icons. You can have two top views. So for instance, if you wanted to have one top view and kind of detail the left half and one top view detail the right, you could do that. It's not going to stop you from doing that anymore in 2014. Also, with replace model view, there's been a decent amount of time that we put into this drawing. We've got some dimensions, a lot of different views, a little bit of annotations. So we don't want to lose all that, but we want to replace the model with a different one. So maybe we started this drawing and then later on we added a bunch of components and we turned it into an assembly. And we say, gee, I really wish I could reuse this drawing but just with a different model or a different assembly. Well, you can now in 2014 with replace model. And if the part that you began dimensioning or detailing out is actually contained within the assembly that you used to replace it, it will actually reattach every single dimension and annotation. So for instance, in this case, I started with the bottom cover, bottom plate of a laptop, and then I actually replaced it with the entire assembly. Now the assembly obviously contained that bottom plate of the laptop, so it was able to reattach all the dimensions, all the views, and everything. So this is a really great way to sort of start off and add detail as you need it, or even replace entire models or assemblies. So every view will be updated, and it's a really nice way, just to kind of start off. Again, if you want to start with a part, you can turn that into an assembly without worrying that you're going to lose all of your drawings in the future. Also, you can, with a completely new model, oftentimes it requires to make some adjustments to the section view and the bottom view. So in 2013, we introduced this brand new section view assist, basically a section view wizard. So you could create section views very easily in 2013, but you couldn't edit them with the same tool. So now you can. You can actually use that same tool to go and edit those section views the same way. Also, if you work with stacked balloons, which is a very nice way to kind of create nice clean drawings, clean bill of materials with stacked, and also show the assembly order using the stack up, you're going to like this feature. Now if you go and you want to reattach to a different part, you can do so just by right-clicking on a stacked balloon and saying reattach. And you can attach them either in a different order or to different parts altogether. So for instance, if you go and you change the screw here or the lock washer, previously in other versions of SolidWorks, you'd have to delete all of the stacked balloons and then re-add that stack. Now if there's an error, you can just reattach it to your new part and you're good to go. You don't lose any information. Also, section on a surface, where if you start with a surface body, which a lot of times they do, and especially in this laptop case here, it's just a surface, it's not a solid body, we can now fully section this in a drawing. So previously we were not able to section surfaces, we could only section solid bodies, and now in 2014 that is removed. So now we can section anything we want. Also for the intersection of dimensions. So when you're adding dimensions, sometimes the virtual intersection of the geometry is really where you want to be dimensioning to. So in this case, it's a very curvy laptop. There's a lot of fillets and curves, but really we want to get the overall length of this laptop. So previously we could do this by inserting a virtual sharp or a virtual point, but we'd have to do that ahead of time and then go and dimension to it. We could do it, but there's a couple extra steps. So now you can actually find the intersection of two entities on the fly while you're dimensioning. So if you click one, you can actually just go and find the virtual intersection of the two other points and then dimension right to that. You don't have to remember to do it ahead of time. So this saves a lot of time, and again, it's going to give you a little bit more accurate results because you can find that virtual intersection automatically on the fly. Also, 2014 gives you separate control of leaders and extension lines in the dimensions. So if you want to control the line type or the line width of the dimension leaders or the extension lines, you can do that specifically now for each type. Also, split dual dimensioning, there's a lot more control now when it comes to dimensioning, where if you want to add some dual dimensions and you want to have it split, some on the top of the line and some on the bottom, which makes a lot of sense. I use that line as a nice sort of divider. You can do that now in 2014. And you can also control text if the text goes above the line or if you want to add some text below the line. So again, just a little more control. Again, this is all going to stay locked into that dimension. So if you move the dimension around, this text and everything is going to follow along with it, but it's going to stay with your formatting. So it just makes it a lot easier. Also, annotation attachment control. And I actually had a question on this, so I'm glad to say that the answer is yes now. So basically, you can change how notes and annotations are attached to different views. So if you add a note or an annotation and it's locked into, say, a top view or it's locked to an isometric view, you can basically just right-click on the note or annotation and attach it to either a different view, or you can conversely attach it to the sheet itself. So if you want to attach it to another view, it's going to follow along that view, and if you attach it to the sheet, it's going to stay basically locked in its own space, and it's not going to move around when you go and drag any of these view annotations. So a lot of nice enhancements with drawings as well, just to get everything wrapped up for you in a nice drawing package.
All right, I can't leave out simulation. I am curious about who out there is using the simulation suite of products and or how you're simulating your designs today or validating them. So if you can kind of help us understand, what you're doing today would be great. It helps us work with you again better. We did have a number of questions about content that we skipped over today, Jake. Remember how we skipped over the sphere? And we skipped over.
I noticed that.
So our customers noticed. So we, what I said in the questions actually, we do have, we actually went through a lot of that content faster than I thought we would. So I was thinking that maybe there's a couple topics that we can go back and still cover. What do you say?
Absolutely.
So I was thinking, just a reminder that let me close up this poll. You guys can finish up your answers there, and we'll close up the poll if we could. Okay. So just as a reminder to the webinar series, just if anybody wants to get going with their day, Actually, maybe I'll ask one more question, sorry, before we get going. Actually, sorry, before we go back to the other stuff, let's wrap up the webinar in case people want to get going. So, because that way we can kind of drag on for people who are interested. So just so you're aware, tomorrow is about the SolidWorks solution. So some of the products that we talked about or asked about today with simulation, EPDM, those are covered in tomorrow. And then on Friday, tune in for SolidWorks Electrical. So lots of people coming out to view that product as well. So thanks everybody for attending. We did, one last poll question just to give us some feedback just on the content of this webinar. Like I said, we are going to kind of stay online and we're going to show you a couple of the things that we missed. But we thought we'd wrap it up here in case people want to tune out. I think what I was thinking about doing is maybe covering that sphere mate, because I did have somebody asking about that. It's no problem to cover, so we can go back. And the other one was that patterning. So we'll see, see what we get to. But we are going to kind of keep the webinar under that hour limit that we're trying to shoot for. Okay. So thanks again, everybody, for attending. And stick around. We'll queue up some of the sphere examples, and we'll come back in just about 20 seconds. So sit tight. Okay. Is that okay? No. All right. So we'll. So for anybody that wants to stick around, we're going to go back and cover some examples on the sphere mate that we skipped over before for time's sake. But we actually do have time after all. So let's go through them. So Jake, I'll just let you take it away.
All right. So yeah. So for sphere mates, and they are pretty exciting. So I'm actually glad we get to cover this. So it really is an interesting addition to the mates catalog of mates you can use in 2014. So mating spheres in 2014 gets a lot more interesting. So in SolidWorks 2013, we were able to mate spheres to tangent faces, to planes and cones, but there were a lot of